She told the young rancher to walk away. Then he saw the letter hidden beneath her wagon seat. The first thing Eli Mercer heard was not the wagon braking. It was the woman shouting at her horse as the road gave way beneath them. "Keep moving, Jasper." Her voice carried across the open Montana grassland, sharp enough to cut through the rising wind. Eli lifted his head from the fence post he was driving into the hard earth. Half a mile away, a gray wagon leaned toward a narrow wash where spring rain had eaten through the road. One wheel spun in loose mud. The horse strained forward. The wagon slipped another inch toward the drop. Eli dropped his hammer and ran. By the time he reached the road, the woman had climbed down. She wore a dark green traveling dress, plain but well made, with the sleeves rolled above her wrists. Dust covered her boots. A few strands of brown hair had escaped from the knot beneath her hat, and silver showed near her temples. She looked to be around 40, perhaps a little older. She also looked furious that he had come. "Stay back," she called. "The ground is breaking." "I can see that." The wagon groaned behind her. Eli slowed but did not stop. "Your rear wheel is sliding." "I can see that, too." She pulled a rope from beneath the wagon seat and tied it around the nearest cottonwood trunk. Her hands moved quickly, but Eli noticed the small tremble in her fingers. Not fear, he thought. Exhaustion. The sky had turned the color of iron over the western hills. Rain would come before long, and when it did, the wash beside the road would fill fast. Eli stepped closer. "My ranch is beyond that ridge," he said. "I have chains and another horse." "I do not need another horse." The wagon shifted again. A wooden box inside struck the floor with a heavy thud. The woman's face changed. Only for a second. She turned toward the sound, as though something alive had moved beneath the canvas. Eli saw it. "What is in there?" "Nothing that concerns you." Another gust swept across the road. The wagon canvas snapped hard in the wind. Her horse tossed its head, eyes white around the edges. Eli reached for the bridle. The woman caught his wrist. Her grip was stronger than he expected. "I said I can manage." He looked down at her hand and then into her face. Her eyes were gray, steady, and tired in a way that had nothing to do with the road. "I believe you," he said quietly, "but the land does not care what either of us can manage." For a moment, neither moved. Then the earth cracked beneath the rear wheel. The wagon dropped. The horse screamed and lunged forward. Eli grabbed the bridle, pulling the animal away from the wash while the woman seized the rope. Mud slid beneath their boots. The cottonwood bent, its roots groaning under the weight. "Cut the traces," Eli shouted. "No. If the wagon goes, it will drag the horse with it." She stared at the canvas-covered wagon. Rain began to strike the dust in dark, scattered marks. "There are things inside I cannot lose. Then we save the horse first and go after the rest." Her jaw tightened. Another crack came from below. Eli pulled his knife free, but she snatched it from his hand. With one swift motion, she cut the leather traces herself. The horse stumbled forward and nearly knocked Eli down. Behind them, the wagon rolled halfway into the wash before the rope caught. It stopped at a steep angle, one wheel hanging over empty space. The woman stood breathing hard, Eli's knife still in her hand. A cold drop of rain ran down her cheek. "Now," Eli said, "we have about 5 minutes before that rain becomes a flood." She looked toward the wagon. "I need one box." "Which one?" She did not answer. She climbed onto the tilted rear step. Eli caught her around the waist before she could disappear beneath the canvas. She twisted against him. "Release me." "That wagon will roll." "Then hold the rope. You are not going in there alone." Her eyes flashed. "You do not know me." "No, ma'am, but I know what a broken neck looks like." The anger in her face faded, leaving something more dangerous behind it. Fear. Not for herself. For whatever lay inside. Eli tied the loose end of the rope around his waist and climbed after her. The wagon floor tilted so sharply that crates and bedding had piled against one side. A lantern rolled near his boot. A travel trunk had split open, spilling folded dresses, books, and a framed photograph with its glass broken. The woman ignored all of it. She dropped to her knees and reached beneath the driver's bench. "Help me lift this." Together, they pulled out a narrow black box bound with 2 leather straps. It was not large, but she held it against her chest as if it contained the last piece of her life. The wagon moved. Eli heard the cottonwood roots tear. "Out," he ordered. They jumped clear just as the rope snapped. The wagon slid into the wash and struck the bottom with a crash of splintering wood. The woman did not cry out. She stood in the rain, holding the black box. Her hat had fallen off. Wet hair clung to her face. She watched everything she owned sink into muddy water without making a sound. Eli picked up her hat. "I am Eli Mercer," he said. "My house is close. You can wait out the storm there." She took the hat but did not put it on. "Rebecca Hale." "Where were you headed, Mrs. Hale?" "Silver Creek." "That is another 12 miles. "I know." Lightning flashed beyond the hills. Eli turned toward his ranch, but Rebecca remained still. One of the leather straps on the black box had torn loose. The lid opened slightly, and a folded letter slipped into the mud. Rebecca moved too late. Eli bent and picked it up. The rain had blurred some of the ink, but the name written across the front was still clear. Thomas Mercer. His dead father. Eli slowly raised his eyes to the stranger standing on his road. Rebecca's face had gone pale. "You were bringing this to my father," he said. She tightened her arms around the box. "No," she answered. Then she looked toward the ranch beyond the ridge. "I came to tell you what he did." The storm reached them before Eli could ask another question. Rain swept across the road in a solid gray wall, flattening the grass and turning the dust beneath their boots into thick mud. Rebecca pressed the black box against her chest while thunder rolled over the hills. Eli looked toward the ranch. "We need to move. I can walk to Silver Creek." "Not in this. I have walked through worse." "So have I," he said. "That does not make it wise." She held his gaze, her face pale beneath the rain. The letter was still in his hand, its paper softening between his fingers. Thomas Mercer. His father's name seemed heavier than the storm. Eli folded the letter carefully and offered it to her. Rebecca took it without thanks and pushed it beneath the torn strap. "Your horse can stay in my barn," he said. "You can leave when the road clears." "I will pay for the shelter." "No." "Then I will not accept it." A flash of lightning lit the wash behind them. Brown water had already begun rushing around the broken wagon. Eli stared at her for a long moment. "Fine, you may pay by not arguing until we reach the house." For the first time, something almost human touched her expression. It was not a smile, but it came close. "You are very sure of yourself, Mr. Mercer." "Only when the sky is trying to drown somebody." He took the horse's reins and started up the road. Rebecca followed, carrying the black box with both arms. The Mercer ranch sat in a shallow valley between 2 long ridges. A weathered house stood near a red barn, both protected by cottonwoods that bent and shivered under the storm. The fences were straight. The corrals were clean. Even in the hard rain, Rebecca could see that the place had been cared for by someone who noticed small things. Eli led the horse into the barn. Rebecca remained near the doorway. "You can put the box in the house," he said. "It stays with me. I was not planning to steal it. People rarely announce what they plan to steal." He turned toward her. She looked away first. Inside the barn, a chestnut mare shifted in her stall. Eli rubbed the frightened wagon horse between the eyes, speaking low until the animal's breathing slowed. Rebecca watched him from beneath the dripping edge of the roof. "You are good with horses," she said. "They are honest when they are afraid." "And people are not." Not always. Her hand tightened around the box. Eli noticed, but he said nothing. The house was warmer than Rebecca expected. A fire burned low in the stone hearth. A clean shirt hung from a peg near the door. A pair of worn boots stood beside a wooden bench. The place did not look neglected, but it carried the quiet of a room where only one person ever spoke. Eli lit 2 lamps. You can dry your dress by the fire. I will remain as I am. You will catch cold. I have survived cold before. He pulled a towel from a cupboard and set it on the table. You seem determined to survive everything twice. She looked at him sharply. The words had landed somewhere he could not see. Rebecca placed the black box on the table, keeping one hand on its lid. Then she took the towel and dried her face. Eli removed his wet coat. His shirt clung to his shoulders and mud covered one sleeve. He moved toward the stove and filled a kettle. Rebecca watched him. How old are you? 27. Her mouth tightened slightly. You are younger than I expected. You knew my name but not my age. I knew Thomas Mercer had a son. The kettle struck the stove with more force than Eli intended. Had. Rebecca lowered her eyes. I heard he died. 5 years ago. I am sorry. You came 12 miles through a storm to tell me what he did. That does not sound like sorrow. The only sound between them was rain beating against the windows. Eli placed 2 cups on the table. Rebecca did not sit. My father was not perfect, he said, but he was not cruel. I did not say he was. You looked at this ranch like you expected to find something buried beneath it. Her face changed again. A small change. Enough. Eli stepped closer. What is in the box? Records. What kind of records? Letters, receipts, land papers. My father S. Some of them. The fire cracked behind them. Eli looked toward the black box. One corner was marked by an old burn. Mud stained the leather, but the brass lock remained closed. Where did you get it? From my husband. Eli's eyes moved to her left hand. She wore no ring. He is dead, she said. How did he know my father? Rebecca finally sat. Her wet skirt gathered around the chair legs. She looked tired now, more than angry. The strength she had carried on the road seemed to be slipping, not because she trusted Eli, but because the long journey had left her with nothing else to spend. My husband's name was Samuel Hale, she said. He worked for the federal land office in Helena. 12 years ago, he began investigating false claims in this part of the territory. Eli remained standing. What does that have to do with Thomas Mercer? Your father signed one of those claims. That is not possible. I have the paper. My father could barely write his own name. Then perhaps someone helped him. Eli leaned both hands against the table. You said you came to tell me what he did. I came because his name appears in Samuel's records. I came because 3 families lost their farms after that claim was approved. And you believe my father took their land. I believe he knew more than he admitted. Eli's jaw tightened. My father built this place from empty ground. Rebecca looked around the room. Did he? The question struck harder than any accusation. Eli straightened slowly. Rebecca reached for the black box, but he placed his hand on the lid. Open it. No. You brought it to my road. I brought it to Silver Creek. With my father's letter inside. That letter was never meant for you. It has my name now. No, she said quietly, it has his. Thunder shook the windows. Then a hard knock sounded at the front door. Both of them froze. No traveler should have been outside in that storm. Eli reached for the rifle mounted above the hearth. The knock came again. 3 slow strikes. A man's voice called through the wood. Mercer opened the door. I know the woman made it here. Rebecca rose so quickly that her chair fell backward. For the first time since Eli had seen her, she looked truly afraid. She grabbed his arm. Do not let him see the box. Eli lowered the rifle, but kept it close to his side. Who is he asked. Rebecca glanced at the door as another hard knock shook the frame. Silas Creed. The name meant something to Eli. Creed owned a freight office in Silver Creek and half the warehouses near the rail line. People called him a businessman when he was present and a thief when he was not. What does he want with you? The same thing you want. The truth. The box. Eli lifted the black case from the table. Where can I hide it? Rebecca whispered. A shadow moved past the rain-covered window. There was no time to argue. Eli carried the box into the small pantry and pulled aside a sack of flour. Beneath it was a loose floorboard his father had once used to hide money during cattle drives. Eli lifted the board, placed the case in the narrow space, and covered it again. Rebecca watched every movement. You trust that hiding place? She asked. I trusted it until you saw it. The front door rattled. Mercer. Eli returned to the main room and pointed toward a chair beside the fire. Sit down. I will not pretend to be helpless. I am not asking you to. I am asking you to look like someone who nearly lost her life in a storm. Rebecca sat, though the anger in her eyes made it clear she considered obedience a temporary condition. Eli opened the door. Silas Creed stood on the porch beneath a black oilskin coat. He was close to 50, with narrow eyes, a pale mustache, and a silver-handled cane that looked too fine for the muddy road. A second man waited behind him beside 2 horses. Creed smiled. Evening, Mercer. You are far from town. Business has a way of traveling. His eyes moved past Eli and settled on Rebecca. There you are, Mrs. Hale. Rebecca did not rise. You followed me. I was worried about you. That would be the first time. Creed's smile remained, but the warmth left it. Eli stepped into the doorway, blocking his view. What is your business here? Creed removed one wet glove finger by finger. Mrs. Hale has taken property that does not belong to her. What property? Private company records, papers that could confuse people who do not understand them. Rebecca gave a quiet, bitter laugh. Is that what you call the truth now? Creed ignored her. Her wagon passed my men outside Silver Creek. When she refused to stop, they followed. Then the storm covered the tracks. Your men chased a woman traveling alone. They tried to protect valuable documents. Eli looked toward the second rider. The man's coat was wet, but his boots carried fresh red mud from the south road. He had not come from Silver Creek. He had come from the direction of the ruined wagon. They had found it. Creed rested both hands on the silver head of his cane. Did Mrs. Hale bring a black case into your house? No. Rebecca's eyes lifted toward Eli. Creed studied him. You answered quickly. The question was simple. The woman may have hidden it in your barn. She has been here less than 20 minutes. Then you will not object if we look. I do. The wind pushed rain through the open doorway. Eli did not move. Creed's smile faded. You are making a mistake. I have made plenty. I recognize the feeling. For a long moment, only the storm spoke. Then Creed put his glove back on. Mrs. Hale is not who she claims to be, he said. Her husband died after accusing honest men of crimes they did not commit. Grief has made her reckless. Rebecca rose from the chair. My husband died because he refused to burn those records. Creed turned toward her. Samuel died in a hotel fire. A fire that started in a locked office. You have repeated that tale so often you may believe it. Eli saw Rebecca's hand close into a fist. Creed looked back at him. Ask her why she waited 12 years. Ask her how many people she has accused. Ask her what happened to the last man who tried to help her. The words struck Rebecca harder than she wanted him to see. Eli noticed the way her shoulders stiffened. Creed stepped off the porch. I will return when the weather clears. By then, Mercer, you may understand whom you have invited beneath your roof. He and the second rider mounted their horses and disappeared into the rain. Eli closed the door. Rebecca stood near the fire, staring at the place where Creed had been. What happened to the last man? Eli asked. Her face turned cold. You should not have lied for me. That was not an answer. He trusted me. And he died. The room seemed to grow smaller. Rebecca walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. Creed's riders were no longer visible, but she kept watching the road. His name was Daniel Pike, she said. He worked with Samuel at the land office. 3 months ago, he sent me a message saying he had found the missing claim book. He asked me to meet him in Helena. Eli waited. When I arrived, Daniel was gone. They found him 2 days later near the river. Was he murdered? No one was willing to say. But you believe Creed did it. I believe Silas Creed has spent 12 years making certain. No one can prove anything. Eli went to the pantry and retrieved the black box. Rebecca turned sharply. You should burn it, she said. Is that what you want? No. Then stop telling me what fear wants. He set the box on the table. Rebecca stared at him, wounded pride fighting against exhaustion. Why are you helping me? Because Creed looked at you like he owned your silence. That answer left her with nothing to say. Eli opened a drawer and took out a small iron tool. After several careful turns, the damaged lock gave way. The lid lifted. Inside were bundles of letters, old maps, tax receipts, and land claims tied with faded ribbon. Rebecca reached for the papers, then stopped. One envelope lay on top. It had not been there when she packed the box. She knew because the handwriting was too familiar to mistake. Samuel's handwriting. Across the front were 5 words. For Eli Mercer when he is ready. Rebecca stepped back from the table. That is impossible, she whispered. Eli broke the seal. The first line took the strength from his face. Son, the land beneath your house was never mine. Eli read the first line again. Son, the land beneath your house was never mine. The rain struck the windows as if trying to enter. Rebecca stood across the table, one hand pressed against the chair. The color had not returned to her face. Eli forced himself to continue. I did not steal it, but I allowed my name to hide the men who did. At the time, I believed I was protecting families from losing everything. By the time I understood the truth, Silas Creed's father had control of the land office, the sheriff, and every loan within 50 miles. Eli stopped. His father's voice seemed to rise from the page, calm and ashamed. What does it say? Rebecca asked. You can read. It was written to you. You brought it. I did not know it was there. Eli looked at her. How could a letter appear inside your box without you knowing? I checked every bundle before leaving Helena. Then someone placed it there. Yes. Who? Rebecca glanced toward the door. Eli understood. Creed. No, if Silas had opened the box, he would have taken it. Eli lowered his eyes to the letter. The original claim belonged to a family named Bell. Their home stood where my barn stands now. Their wheat field became my south pasture. They were driven away after a debt was created in their name. I signed a new claim because I was told the land would otherwise be sold to strangers. I thought I could hold it until the Bells returned. Eli's hands tightened around the paper. His barn, his pasture, the spring where he watered his cattle. Everything he had spent his life protecting had belonged to someone else. What happened to the Bell family? He asked. Rebecca's answer came slowly. They disappeared from county records. That is not what I asked. The father died during the winter after they left. The mother took her children east. Children? A son and a daughter. Eli studied her face. How do you know? The names are in Samuel's notes. That is not the whole answer. Rebecca turned toward the fire. Her wet dress had begun to steam in the heat. She looked smaller without her anger standing between them. Finish the letter, she said. Eli wanted to demand the truth from her. Instead, he read on. Samuel Hale came to me 12 years ago. He knew the claims were false. I gave him copies of what I had saved, but the most important record was already missing. Samuel believed Creed had hidden it somewhere in Silver Creek. A heavy sound came from the barn. The wagon horse whinnied, high and frightened. Eli placed the letter on the table and reached for his coat. The thunder is troubling him. Rebecca followed. You can stay here. He is my horse. You nearly went into a flooded wash for that box. And I cut him free before the wagon fell. Eli had no answer to that. They crossed the yard beneath the hard rain. Water ran from the barn roof in silver sheets. Inside, the horse kicked the stall wall and pulled against the rope. Rebecca entered without hesitation. Easy, Jasper. The animal turned toward her voice. She moved slowly, one hand raised. Mud covered the hem of her dress and rain dripped from her hair, but her voice remained steady. You did well today, she whispered. Better than I did. Jasper's breathing softened. Eli watched her place her forehead against the horse's face. The woman who had faced a collapsing road without crying now closed her eyes as the animal leaned into her. Her hand trembled against its cheek. You thought you were going to lose him, Eli said. I have lost enough. The words were quiet, but they filled the barn. Eli removed his coat and laid it over her shoulders. Rebecca opened her eyes. I do not need this. I know. Then why give it to me? Because knowing you can stand in the cold does not mean I have to leave you there. She stared at him. For one brief moment, her guarded expression broke. Beneath it was pain so old that it seemed to have shaped the lines around her eyes. Then she pulled the coat closed. Thank you, she said. It was the first time the words sounded like more than manners. They returned to the house after Jasper settled. Eli placed more wood on the fire while Rebecca opened the black box. Samuel believed the missing claim book would prove who ordered the false debts, she said. Without it, the papers only show that honest men signed dishonest claims. Men like my father. Yes. Eli looked toward his father's chair near the hearth. Thomas Mercer had sat there every winter evening, sharpening tools, repairing tack, or reading the same newspaper until the edges tore. Eli had trusted that chair. He had trusted the man inside it. Rebecca began arranging the papers by date. Eli sat across from her. Together, they searched for the Bell claim. Near the bottom of the box, Eli found an old map folded inside a tax record. A black circle had been drawn around the Mercer ranch house. Beside it, Samuel had written 2 words. Behind the stone. Eli carried the lamp to the fireplace. The stone wall rose above the mantel, dark with years of smoke. He pressed his fingers along the edges until one stone shifted beneath his hand. Rebecca joined him. Together, they pulled it free. A narrow space had been cut into the wall. Inside lay a small cloth bundle. Eli placed it on the table and opened it. There was an original land deed, a brass key, and an old photograph. 3 people stood in front of a building marked Helena Land Office. Samuel Hale was on the left. Thomas Mercer stood on the right. Between them was a younger woman with dark hair and clear gray eyes. Eli looked from the photograph to Rebecca. You knew my father. Rebecca did not deny it. Her fingers touched the edge of the picture. He came to my house once, she said. Went. The night Samuel died. Eli's chest tightened. What did he tell you? Rebecca raised her eyes. He told me your father was already dead. A floorboard creaked behind them. Someone was standing in the pantry. Eli turned so fast that the lamp flame bent inside the glass. A man stepped out of the pantry with both hands raised. He was thin, soaked through, and breathing hard. Blood darkened one sleeve, though the wound did not look fresh. His hat was gone, and wet hair hung across his forehead. Rebecca recognized him first. Daniel. The name left her like a breath she had been holding for months. Daniel Pike leaned against the doorframe. "You took your time getting here," he said. Rebecca crossed the room in 3 steps and struck him across the face. The sound cracked through the house. Daniel did not defend himself. "You let me believe you were dead. I needed Creed to believe it too. They found your coat by the river. I put it there. They found blood. Mind." Rebecca's hand rose again, but this time it stopped. Her fingers trembled near his cheek. "You could have sent word." "To whom?" Daniel asked quietly. "Creed watches the telegraph office. He pays men at the stage station. He even knows which widow buys extra flour." His eyes moved to Eli. "I hoped the letter would bring her here before Creed caught her." Eli stepped between Daniel and the table. "You put my father's letter in the box." "Yes." "How did you get into her wagon?" "At the livery yard in Helena. She was arguing with the owner about the price of feed." Rebecca turned toward him. "You were 10 feet away." "Closer." "And you said nothing." "I was trying to keep you alive." "You have a poor way of showing it." Daniel lowered his hands. "I had no better way." Eli picked up the photograph. "You knew Thomas Mercer." Daniel looked at the picture and nodded. "He helped Samuel hide evidence." "My father died 5 years ago." "Yes." Rebecca said he came to her house the night Samuel died. Daniel glanced at her. "She still does not know the whole of it." Rebecca went still. "Then tell it." Daniel moved toward the fire, holding his wounded arm close to his body. Water dripped from his boots. His face carried the hollow look of a man who had been sleeping badly for a long time. "Samuel found the missing claim book 12 years ago," he said. "Not a copy, the real one." Rebecca stared at him. "You told me it was lost." "I told you what Samuel ordered me to tell you." "Samuel never kept secrets from me." "He kept this one." Daniel looked at the brass key on the table. The book named every false debt, every stolen parcel, and every man who received payment. Silas Creed's father was there. So was the judge in Helena, 2 sheriffs, and several ranchers. Eli's jaw tightened. "And Thomas Mercer." Daniel shook his head. His name was beside one claim, but no payment was listed. Samuel believed Thomas had been used as a cover. "Then why did my father stay silent?" "Because Creed threatened his son." Eli said nothing. The fire popped behind him. Daniel pointed toward the letter. Thomas agreed to sign one false claim. After that, Creed told him that any confession would place a rope around his neck and leave you without a father. Eli looked toward the empty chair near the hearth. His anger did not disappear, it only changed shape. Rebecca's face hardened. "Where is the claim book?" Daniel sat slowly. "Samuel gave it to Thomas." Eli looked at the hidden space behind the fireplace. "It was not there." "No, the brass key opens the place where Thomas moved it." "Where?" Daniel hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Eli stepped closer. "You entered my house during a storm. You hid in my pantry. You let her think you were dead. Do not start guarding the truth now." Daniel glanced toward Rebecca. "The old mission chapel beyond Crow Ridge." Eli knew the place. It had been empty since before he was born, its roof broken and its graveyard nearly swallowed by grass. "What does the key open?" "A box beneath the altar." Rebecca pressed both hands against the table. "Why did you wait until now?" Daniel looked at her with regret. "Because I made a mistake." What mistake? I trusted Silas Creed's bookkeeper. The room became quiet again. Daniel's voice lowered. Her name was Clara Voss. She said she wanted to help. She gave me copies of Creed's accounts, but they were false. When I went to meet her, 2 men were waiting. The men at the river, Rebecca said. Yes. How did you escape? I did not escape cleanly. He pulled back his sleeve. A deep cut crossed his upper arm, poorly wrapped with cloth. Eli went to the cupboard for bandages. Daniel watched him. Creed knows about the chapel. Eli stopped. How? Clara heard Samuel mention Crow Ridge years ago. She did not know what was hidden there, but she told Creed enough. Rebecca reached for the brass key. We leave now. Eli took it from her hand. No. You do not decide that. The creek will be high. The ridge trail turns to mud in rain. And Creed may already be there. He may be waiting for exactly that. Rebecca stepped closer. Samuel died protecting that book. And my father spent the rest of his life hiding it. That is why we cannot leave it. Eli met her eyes. No, that is why we do not run blindly into darkness. Her anger flared, but beneath it was fear. Not the fear of losing papers. The fear of failing the dead. Eli understood that kind of burden. He had carried one of his own since the day he buried his father and took charge of the ranch before he felt ready. He lowered his voice. We go at first light. We take the north trail where Creed will not expect us. Rebecca stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Daniel leaned back in the chair, pale from pain. There is something else. Neither of them spoke. The book is not the only thing under that altar. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. What else did Samuel hide? Daniel looked directly at her. A second letter. For whom? Daniel's answer came softly. For the daughter of the Bell family. Rebecca's face emptied of color. Eli saw it and finally understood what she had refused to tell him. You are not Rebecca Hale by birth, he said. She looked down at the old photograph. Outside, thunder rolled away toward the eastern plains. My name was Rebecca Bell, she said. Eli stared at the woman standing in his father's house. The land beneath them had once belonged to her family. For 12 years, she had searched for the truth. Now she was sleeping under the roof built upon everything she had lost. If one buried secret can change 2 lives, stay with the story, because the hardest truth is still waiting at Crow Ridge. Before dawn, someone set fire to Eli's barn. The first flame climbed the barn wall like a red hand. Eli saw it through the kitchen window and was moving before Daniel finished shouting. He seized the water bucket by the door and ran into the yard, where the rain had weakened to a cold mist. The barn roof glowed against the dark sky. Jasper, Rebecca cried. She raced past Eli without her coat. He caught her arm. The horses first, stay behind me. She pulled free. He is my horse. And that is my barn. They reached the doors together. Smoke rolled through the gaps in the boards. Inside, the animals kicked against their stalls, frightened by the heat and the sharp smell of burning hay. Eli wrapped his sleeve across his mouth and forced the doors open. The chestnut mare broke loose first. Rebecca caught her halter and led her into the corral. Eli entered again for Jasper. A burning beam fell across the center aisle. The horse reared, pulling against his rope. Easy, Eli said, though his own voice shook. Easy, boy. He climbed over the beam, heat pressing against his face. Jasper struck the stall wall with one hoof. Outside, Rebecca shouted his name. Eli cut the rope and slapped the horse's side. Jasper lunged through the smoke and cleared the fallen beam. Eli followed, stumbling into the wet yard as part of the roof collapsed behind him. Rebecca took hold of his shoulders. Are you hurt? I am standing. That was not my question. His left hand was burned across the palm. He closed it before she could see. Daniel limped from the house carrying another bucket. Together, they threw water onto the side wall while the last of the rain helped keep the flames from spreading to the corrals. But the hayloft could not be saved. By sunrise, the barn still stood, blackened and open to the sky. Steam rose from the ruined boards. The smell of smoke settled over the ranch. Eli walked through the ashes without speaking. The winter feed was gone. 2 saddles had burned. So had his father's workbench, the one Thomas had built when Eli was a boy. Rebecca stood near the doorway, wrapped in Eli's coat. "This is because of me," she said. Eli crouched beside a charred length of rope. "This is because of Creed. He came because I brought the box here. He came because he is afraid of what is inside it." Daniel searched near the rear wall. After a moment, he bent and picked something from the mud. A silver button. He wiped the soot away with his thumb. "I saw this on Creed's rider," he said, "the man who stood behind him last night." Eli took the button. It carried the mark of the Silver Creek Freight Company. Creed had not meant to frighten them. He had meant to delay them. Eli looked toward Crow Ridge, where the first light touched the dark line of trees. "He is going to the chapel." Rebecca was already walking toward the horses. Daniel tried to stand straight, but nearly fell. "You cannot ride," Eli told him. "I know the North Trail better than either of you. You can barely cross the yard." Daniel's face tightened with shame. Rebecca approached him. "You stay here." "I did not survive the river to hide in a kitchen." "No," she said. "You survived so you could tell someone where the truth was buried. You have done that." Daniel looked at her, then lowered his eyes. Eli saddled the chestnut mare. Jasper had a shallow cut on one leg, so Rebecca used Eli's second horse, a steady sorrel gelding named Amos. Before mounting, Eli returned to the house and wrapped his burned hand. Rebecca watched him tie the cloth with his teeth. "You said you were not hurt." "I said I was standing." Her eyes narrowed. "That was a poor answer when I gave it, and it is no better from you." She took the bandage from him and tied it properly. Her fingers moved with care, though anger remained in her face. "You could lose the ranch because of this," she said. "Maybe it was never mine. That does not mean you did not build a life here. It was your family's life first." Rebecca stopped tying the cloth. "My father planted wheat in the south field," she said. "My mother kept roses beside the house. I was 8 when men came with papers and told us to leave." Eli looked toward the window. "No roses grow here. They died before your father arrived." The words were not cruel. That made them harder to hear. Rebecca finished the knot. "I spent years believing Thomas Mercer stole our home," she continued. "When he came to me after Samuel's death, I wanted to hate him. He stood in my doorway soaked from the rain, holding that black box. He said Samuel had saved the claim book, but Creed's men were searching every road." "Why did he tell you he was already dead?" "He said it was safer if no one knew he had come. He told me that from that night onward, Thomas Mercer had to be a dead man to me." Eli understood now. His father had not died that night. He had died in Rebecca's story, so Creed would never learn they had met. "Why did you wait 12 years?" he asked. "Because your father made me promise. To protect me. To protect both of us. He said Creed would destroy anyone who tried to return the Bell land." Eli opened the door. "And now?" "Now Thomas is gone, Samuel is gone, and Daniel nearly joined them." Rebecca looked toward the burned barn. "I am tired of letting fear keep other men powerful." They rode north beneath a pale morning sky. The trail climbed through wet pine and broken stone. Crow Ridge rose ahead of them, steep and silent. Neither spoke for nearly an hour. At the top, the old mission chapel appeared between the trees. Its bell tower leaned toward the east. Half the roof was missing. Tall grass covered the graveyard. 2 fresh horses stood tied behind the chapel. Eli and Rebecca dismounted. The front door hung open. Inside, the altar had been pulled apart. Broken boards covered the floor. The iron box beneath it was gone. Rebecca stared at the empty hole. "We are too late." Then Eli noticed a thin line of blood on the stone steps leading toward the graveyard. He followed it past 3 fallen crosses. Behind the chapel, Sila's creed lay against a grave marker, one hand pressed to his side. His silver-handled cane was gone. He looked up at Eli and Rebecca. "Clara took the book," he said. Rebecca froze. Creed coughed and pointed toward the eastern trail. "She is riding to Silver Creek." "To give it to whom?" Eli asked. Creed's face twisted with fear. "Not to anyone," he answered. "She plans to burn the whole town with the truth." Rebecca stared down at Sila's Creed. "You expect us to believe she turned against you?" Creed's face tightened as he pressed his hand harder against his side. His coat was torn, but the wound beneath it did not appear deep. Clara had hurt him enough to stop him, not enough to kill him. "She was never loyal to me," he said. "She waited 12 years for someone to lead her to that box." "Why?" Eli asked. Creed glanced toward the open graveyard, as if the dead might answer for him. "Clara Voss is Samuel Hale's daughter." Rebecca took a step backward. "That is a lie. Samuel had no daughter." "Not with you." The morning wind moved through the high grass. Somewhere inside the ruined chapel, a loose board knocked softly against the wall. Rebecca's expression did not change, but Eli saw her fingers close around the edge of her coat. "Samuel was my husband for 11 years, she said. "And before that, he lived in Missouri under another name." Creed laughed once, then winced. "He left a woman there with a child. Clara learned the truth after her mother died. By then, Samuel had already become a respected investigator and a devoted husband in Helena." Rebecca looked toward the chapel. The news seemed to have struck a place in her that had never learned how to bend. Eli stepped beside her. "Creed wants to divide us." She did not look at him. "That does not make every word false." Creed pushed himself higher against the stone marker. Clara found Samuel's old letters among her mother's things. She came west to learn why he abandoned them. Instead, she discovered that he died protecting land records for another woman's family. "My family," Rebecca said. "Yes, your family." The cruelty in Creed's voice returned now that he had found firm ground. "She believes Samuel chose you twice, first when he left her mother, then when he died for the Bell claim." Rebecca's eyes turned cold. "And you fed that anger?" "I hired a capable bookkeeper." "You used a grieving woman." Creed's smile was thin. "We all use what grief gives us." Eli crouched and removed Creed's gun from its holster. "You are coming with us." "To Silver Creek." "To face the sheriff." Creed looked almost amused. "Sheriff Dugan has taken my money for 8 years. Then he can face the town with you. You still believe a town cares about truth?" Eli stood. "I believe people care when the truth reaches their own doorstep." Creed nodded toward the eastern trail. "Then ride quickly. Clara plans to ring the church bell at noon and read every name in that book before the whole town." "That does not sound like burning anything," Rebecca said. She also took a can of lamp oil. Eli's attention sharpened. "What is she going to burn?" "The land office, the freight records, every deed and loan in Silver Creek." Rebecca looked toward the distant valley. "If she destroys the records, innocent families may lose proof of what they own." "She knows," Creed said. "Then why do it?" "Because she does not want the land returned. She wants every man who benefited from Samuel's work to feel what her mother felt." Eli pulled Creed to his feet. Creed stumbled, then leaned heavily on him. Rebecca remained still. "Samuel had a daughter," she whispered. Eli could hear the wound beneath the words. She had spent 12 years guarding the memory of a man she believed she understood. Now, in the space of a few breaths, that memory had become another locked room. We do not know what is true yet, he said. Rebecca finally looked at him. That has been said to me by every man who wanted more time to hide something. Eli released Creed and faced her fully. I am not Samuel. No. I am not my father either. Her eyes softened, though only slightly. No, she repeated, you are not. They tied Creed's hands and lifted him onto one of the fresh horses. Eli secured the reins to his saddle. Rebecca mounted Amos without assistance. The eastern trail descended sharply through the pines. Mud pulled at the horses' hooves, and broken branches forced them to ride single file. Creed spoke from behind Eli. You should ask her what she intends to do with your ranch. Rebecca's shoulders stiffened. Eli did not turn. She has a right to it. Does she? It belonged to her family. And when she takes it, where will you go? Rebecca pulled her horse to a stop. Eli stopped beside her. Creed watched them with quiet satisfaction. Rebecca's voice was low. I did not come to take your home. You came for the Bell claim. I came for proof. What happens when you have it? She looked beyond him toward the valley. I do not know. It was the first answer she had given him that held no certainty. Eli studied her face. Would you force me off the land? Pain flickered across her eyes. Would you blame me if I did? He thought of the burned barn, his father's chair, the pasture where he had buried an old mare as a boy. He thought of an 8-year-old girl watching strangers claim her mother's roses. No, he said. Rebecca's lips parted. Creed's expression darkened. He had expected anger, not surrender. Eli continued down the trail. Rebecca followed after a moment. By the time they reached the edge of Silver Creek, the church bell was ringing. Men and women poured from stores and houses toward the town square. A wagon blocked the road outside the land office. On top of it stood a woman in a brown riding coat, holding a thick book above her head. Clara Voss. At her feet sat an open can of lamp oil. She saw Rebecca approaching and drew a match from her pocket. Come closer, Clara shouted, and every lie in this town turns to ash. Rebecca dismounted. The crowd moved away from her as she walked forward alone. Clara looked down at the woman her father had chosen. You kept his name, she said. Rebecca stopped before the wagon. I loved him. Clara struck the match. So did my mother. The match burned between Clara's fingers. For one strange second, no one in Silver Creek moved. The church bell gave one last swing above the square, then fell silent. Smoke from the match curled past Clara's face as she stood on the wagon beside the open can of oil. Behind her, the land office windows reflected the gathered crowd. Rebecca looked up at her. Your mother had every right to hate Samuel, she said. Clara's hand trembled. Several townspeople whispered. They had expected denial, perhaps anger. They had not expected Rebecca to agree. You knew about us? Clara asked. No. Then do not speak of her. I know what it is to build a life around a man's promise, and discover that part of it was hidden. Clara lowered the match an inch. Creed watched from horseback, his wrists tied to the saddle horn. His eyes moved between Clara and the oil. Eli saw calculation in his face. Even wounded, Creed was searching for a way to use them against one another. Clara held up the claim book. My mother waited 15 years for Samuel to return, she said. Every winter, she believed the next stage might bring him home. She kept his coat on a peg beside the door until the cloth turned gray. Rebecca's face tightened. He told me she was dead. Clara laughed, but there was no joy in it. Of course he did. The match flame reached her fingertips. She dropped it into the mud. A few people in the crowd breathed again. Then Clara pulled out another. Sheriff Dugan pushed through the townspeople, one hand resting on his gun belt. Get down from there, Miss Voss. Clara turned toward him. Your name is in this book. The sheriff stopped. A murmur spread through the square. Clara opened the ledger and read from a marked page. Walter Dugan, $50 for removing the Bell family from their property, $20 for arresting Jacob Bell when he refused to leave. Rebecca's breath caught at the sound of her father's name. The sheriff looked at the crowd. That book is false. Then you will not mind letting them read it. His hand moved closer to his revolver. Eli stepped between him and the wagon. Take your hand away from the gun. Dugan looked at Eli's burned hand, the soot on his shirt, and Creed tied behind him. You have made trouble far beyond your understanding, Mercer. My barn burned before sunrise. I understand enough. Creed shifted in the saddle. You should listen to the sheriff, he said. Clara stole that book and attacked me. Clara's face turned toward him. You ordered my mother's house burned. I never knew your mother. You kept her letters. Creed's expression changed. Clara reached into her coat and pulled out a tied bundle of yellow paper. I found them in your father's safe. Samuel wrote to her for 3 years after he came west. He promised he would return. Then your father learned Samuel was investigating the land claims. Rebecca stared at the letters. Clara's voice broke for the first time. After that, Samuel stopped writing. Creed shook his head. My father kept many papers. Your father sent a man to Missouri to frighten her into silence. You cannot prove that. Clara lifted the claim book. It is here. The crowd turned toward Creed. The people of Silver Creek were no longer watching a troubled woman threaten a building. They were looking at the man whose company owned their debts, stored their grain, and carried their goods. A shopkeeper near the front spoke first. My brother lost his farm after Creed's office changed the loan terms. Another man raised his voice. My father said the same happened to him. Sheriff Dugan drew his revolver. The movement was quick, but Eli had been waiting for it. He struck Dugan's wrist with his forearm. The gun fell into the mud. The sheriff drove his shoulder into Eli, knocking him against the wagon. Rebecca reached for the fallen weapon, but Creed kicked free of the rope tied to Eli's saddle. His horse reared, scattering the crowd. Creed leaned down and grabbed the revolver first. Enough, he shouted. The square froze again. He pointed the gun toward Clara. Give me the book. Clara stood tall on the wagon, though fear had entered her eyes. You killed Samuel. Rebecca looked sharply at Creed. He smiled without warmth. Samuel Hale died because he believed papers could frighten powerful men. Rebecca took one step forward. Did Thomas Mercer know? Creed glanced at Eli. Thomas arrived too late to save him. The words struck Eli like a fist. Creed continued. Your father found Samuel outside the hotel office. Samuel was still alive long enough to give him the key and tell him where the book would be hidden. Rebecca's eyes filled, but she did not look away. Thomas came to me that night, she said. Yes, and then he spent years pretending courage while remaining silent. Eli's face hardened. He kept the book from you. He also kept it from the families who needed it. Creed aimed the gun at Clara's chest. Throw it down. Clara looked at Rebecca. All the anger between them remained, but beneath it stood something neither woman had expected. They had both been deceived by the same man. They had both spent years loving a memory that was incomplete. Rebecca held out her hand. Give it to me, so you can clear your family's name, so no one else loses a home because of what our husbands and fathers were afraid to face. Clara's eyes filled with tears. My mother died waiting. I know. No, you do not. Rebecca's voice softened. No, I do not know her pain, but I know what silence can take from a woman. Clara looked at the burning match in her hand. Then she dropped it and passed the claim book down to Rebecca. If you believe truth can bring wounded people together instead of tearing them apart, stay with this story. Because one final secret is about to change who truly owns the Mercer Ranch. Creed raised the gun. Eli moved before the shot. He struck Creed's arm upward. The weapon fired into the sky, sending horses and townspeople running. Creed fell from the saddle, landing hard in the mud. Sheriff Dugan reached for the gun again, but 3 ranchers stepped between him and it. This time, the town did not move aside. Rebecca held the claim book against her chest. Clara climbed down from the wagon. For a moment, the 2 women stood face to face. Then a boy pushed through the crowd, carrying a leather mail pouch. "Mr. Mercer," he called, "this came on the morning stage." Eli took the envelope. The seal belonged to the territorial court in Helena. Inside was a legal notice written 3 weeks earlier. Eli read it once, then handed it to Rebecca. Her eyes moved across the page. Thomas Mercer had filed a transfer of ownership before his death. The Mercer Ranch had already been returned to the last living member of the Bell family. But the name written on the deed was not Rebecca S. It was Clara Voss. Clara took the notice from Rebecca and read her own name 3 times. The crowd waited. Silas Creed sat in the mud with 2 ranchers holding his arms. Sheriff Dugan stood beside him, unarmed and surrounded by men who had finally stopped looking afraid. Yet no one watched them now. Every face in Silver Creek had turned toward Clara. "This is wrong," she said. Her voice was quieter than before. Rebecca took the document back and studied the court seal. "It is legal. I have never seen the Mercer Ranch. That does not change the deed." Clara shook her head. "Thomas Mercer did not know me." Daniel Pike's voice came from the edge of the crowd. "Yes, he did." Rebecca turned. Daniel stood beside a borrowed wagon, one arm bound tightly against his chest. His face was pale from the ride, but he had reached the square. Eli moved toward him. "You were told to stay at the ranch." "I have never been skilled at doing what I am told." Daniel looked at Clara. "Thomas learned about you from Samuel." Clara held herself very still. "Went before the hotel fire." Daniel stepped closer, stopping when he saw the anger in her face. "Samuel carried your mother's letters with him. He never destroyed them. He read them often." Clara's eyes hardened. "That does not excuse him." "No," Daniel said, "it does not." His answer seemed to surprise her. "Samuel planned to go back to Missouri," he continued. "He said he would confess everything to Rebecca first, then find you and your mother." Rebecca looked away. Daniel lowered his voice. "He waited too long." Clara stared at the wet street between them. "My mother died believing he had forgotten us." "I know. You know nothing about her." "You are right." Daniel did not defend himself. The church bell moved slightly in the wind, though no one had touched the rope. Eli looked at the court notice. "Why would my father give Clara the ranch?" Daniel nodded toward the claim book. "Because Samuel discovered something about the Bell property." Rebecca opened the ledger and searched through the marked pages. Near the back, she found the original Bell claim. The entry beside it had been changed. A line crossed through Rebecca's father's name. Beneath it, written in faded ink, was another. "Margaret Bell, Rebecca's mother." Clara stepped closer. "My mother's name was Margaret." Rebecca looked up slowly. For a moment, neither woman seemed able to breathe. Clara's face lost all anger. "No," she whispered. Daniel closed his eyes. Samuel did not meet Margaret in Missouri by chance. She was already living there after the Bell family was driven from Montana. Rebecca held the book so tightly that the leather cover bent. "My mother had 2 children. One stayed with her," Daniel said. "One was sent to relatives in Ohio." Rebecca's lips parted. A memory moved across her face. A winter station, her mother crying beside a train, a small girl wrapped in a red blanket. Rebecca had been told the child was a cousin. "She was my sister," Clara said. "You were 5, Rebecca replied. Clara shook her head as tears gathered in her eyes. "My mother never told me. She may have been trying to protect you. Everyone says that after they hide the truth." Rebecca flinched. Clara looked at her, and the years between them seemed to fall away. They were no longer two strangers standing over a disputed ranch. They were daughters of the same woman, each carrying a different half of the same loss. Eli understood what Thomas Mercer had done. The ranch had not been transferred to Clara because he valued her more than Rebecca. It had been placed in the name of the child no one knew was connected to the Bell family. Creed could not take it without revealing the records he had spent years hiding. "My father used the deed as a shield," Eli said. Daniel nodded. He believed Clara's name would confuse Creed long enough for the claim book to be found. Rebecca folded the court notice. "Then the land belongs to both of us." Clara looked toward Eli. "And what becomes of him?" No one answered. Eli watched the question move through the crowd. Some people looked at him with pity. Others looked toward the black smoke still faint above the northern ridge where his barn had burned. He had worked that ranch since boyhood. Every fence, roof, board, and cattle trail carried his hands. But work did not erase theft. "The ranch belongs to the Bell family," he said. Rebecca turned toward him. "Eli, my father knew it. That is why he filed the transfer. You did not steal it. I lived from what was stolen. You were a child. I am not a child now." Clara studied him. "You would walk away. If that is what you decide." Rebecca stepped closer. "Where would you go?" "I can find work." "You say that as though a life is only work." "For a long time mine was." Her eyes searched his face. "And now?" The question carried more than the ranch. Eli looked at her, but the whole town stood around them. Some truths deserved a quieter place. "Now I know a life can change in one day," he said. Rebecca lowered her eyes. Creed laughed from the mud. The sound was weak but bitter. "Touching," he said, "all of you dividing land as though you have already won." One of the ranchers tightened his hold on him. Creed smiled at Clara. "The court notice is worthless." Daniel's expression sharpened. "Why?" "Because Thomas Mercer filed it under a false family claim." "The claim book proves the Bell ownership," Rebecca said. "Only if that book reaches Helena." Creed nodded toward the land office. Smoke had begun to rise behind its windows. The spilled lamp oil had not caught in the street. Someone had set the fire from inside. Sheriff Dugan pulled free from the men beside him and ran toward the alley. Eli started after him. Then Daniel shouted, "The original Bell deed is in the office vault." Flames climbed behind the glass. Rebecca seized Eli's arm. "If that deed burns, Clara and I lose the ranch." Eli looked at the growing fire, then at his bandaged hand. Inside the land office, something heavy crashed to the floor. A woman screamed. Clara turned toward the sound. Her anger vanished. "My mother's letters are in there." Before anyone could stop her, she ran into the burning building. Clara disappeared through the smoke before anyone could reach her. Eli ran after her. The front room of the land office was already burning. Flames climbed the shelves and rolled across the ceiling. Papers lifted into the air, black at the edges, then vanished into sparks. "Clara!" A cough answered from the back room. Eli covered his mouth with his sleeve and pushed through the heat. His burned hand throbbed beneath the bandage, but he kept moving. He found Clara beside the iron vault. A fallen beam pinned the edge of her coat to the floor. She pulled at the cloth while smoke filled the room around her. "The letters," she gasped, "they are inside." Eli seized the coat and tore it free. "Leave them." "I cannot. You will die for paper." My mother waited her whole life for those words. Eli looked at the vault. Its door stood partly open. Inside was a leather packet and a metal deed box. He grabbed both. The ceiling groaned. Clara stumbled, and Eli caught her around the waist. They reached the front room as a burning shelf fell across the doorway. Outside, Rebecca heard the crash. She ran toward the building, but Daniel caught her arm. "You cannot go in. Let me go. You will only give him another person to save." Rebecca struck his hand away. Then the front window shattered. Eli climbed through the broken frame, pushing Clara ahead of him. Two men from the crowd pulled her to the ground. Eli followed just as the roof collapsed behind them. Rebecca reached him first. She held his face between her hands, searching for injury. "Look at me. I am looking. You went into another fire. She went first. That does not make it sensible." "No," he said, struggling for breath, "but it made it necessary." Her hands remained against his face. For once, she did not hide what she felt. Fear, anger, and relief stood together in her eyes. Clara sat in the mud nearby, coughing as she held the leather packet. Daniel opened the metal box. Inside lay the original Bell deed. The seal was faded, but the names were clear. Jacob and Margaret Bell. The crowd gathered around it. Sheriff Dugan had not escaped. 3 ranchers found him behind the land office with a satchel of money and Creed's account records. They brought him back with his hands tied. Silas Creed stopped smiling. Daniel opened the claim book and read the payments aloud. False debts, stolen farms, bribes to the sheriff, money given to judges and clerks. One name followed another. This time, the people of Silver Creek listened. Creed's power had always depended on each family believing it had suffered alone. The book showed them that their losses were connected. By sunset, Creed and Dugan sat locked in the church storage room under guard. Riders carried copies of the records toward Helena and 2 neighboring counties. The truth could no longer disappear in one fire. Clara opened her mother's packet that evening in the church. Most of the letters were from Samuel. Some carried promises he had never kept. Others carried shame he had never found the courage to confess. Beneath them lay one envelope in Margaret Bell's handwriting. It was addressed to my 2 daughters. Rebecca sat beside Clara as she opened it. Margaret wrote that she had sent Rebecca to relatives after losing the ranch because she could not feed 2 children. She had kept Clara with her because the girl had been ill and too weak to travel. She had planned to bring the sisters together. Poverty, distance, and pride had stretched 1 year into many. Her final lines were simple. "A home is not the walls taken from us. It is the place where we stop letting loss choose who we become, find each other, do better than I did." Clara covered her mouth. Rebecca reached across the space between them. Her hand remained there open. Clara looked at it for a long moment. Then she took it. "If this truth touched your heart, remember that healing does not erase the past. It only keeps the past from taking the future too." The territorial court restored the Bell property to both sisters. Creed's company was seized while the claims were investigated, and the stolen farms were reviewed one by one. Eli prepared to leave the ranch. He packed his father's tools, 2 shirts, and the photograph from behind the fireplace. Before dawn, he carried his saddle toward the corral. Rebecca stood beside the gate. "You are leaving without saying goodbye. I did not think goodbyes were something you enjoyed. I have had too many poor ones." He looked toward the black remains of the barn. "The land is yours now." "Ours," she said, "Clara's and mine." "That changes nothing. It changes everything." Clara stepped from the porch, holding a folded agreement. They had drawn it up together. The Bell sisters would own the land. Eli would remain as managing partner with a lawful share of everything the ranch produced. No hidden claim, no favor, no debt passed from one generation to another. Eli read the paper. "You trust me with it." Rebecca looked toward the south field. You protected this place before you knew the truth. Now you can help us build something honest upon it. And if I refuse, then Clara will try to run cattle. Clara folded her arms. I have read several books. Eli laughed. It surprised all three of them. By autumn, a new barn stood where the old one had burned. Daniel became the county clerk and kept every public record in duplicate. Clara stayed at the ranch long enough to plant roses beside the house, just as Margaret Bell once had. Rebecca stayed longer. One evening, Eli found her on the porch holding Thomas Mercer's letter. I spent half my life believing needing no one made me strong, she said. You are strong. That is not the same as being alone. He waited. She looked at the lantern, moving gently in the wind. I do not need you to save me, Eli. I know, but I would like you beside me. He sat next to her. Beyond the porch, Clara's roses moved beneath the wide Montana sky. The rebuilt barn stood dark and solid against the last gold light. Jasper shifted quietly in the corral. Rebecca placed her hand over Eli's bandaged one. The ranch had begun with a stolen deed, survived through silence, and nearly ended in fire. But that evening, beneath a sky washed clean after rain, 3 wounded lives made a home from the truth. And for the first time, no one living there had to stand outside the door.